Good evening. How are you? Well, it's been in the high 90s today, and now it's 8-ish, so there's still sunlight, and it's comfortable. I'd say high 70s, low 80s. The warmth was so great today, just floating in the pool before I swam a mile seemed like the right thing to do. And I had the pool to myself. It was hard to understand. 4 lanes. You could swim, I guess, 8 at the same time. I don't like to do that, but that's what you can do. So, what's going on? I feel the desperation of the paranoid style of politics, which is endemic to the maggots of Trump. And I'll tell you what I mean. We have seen the threats and the violence that's coming from these people. And I started to think about it in these terms. The other night I was on with Ari, and he said something that I hadn't thought about so carefully because I don't have a high regard for what Trump says. But what Ari was asking was, how is it that Trump can have, he didn't say it in these terms, contradictory defenses? You know, he said Trump has said this and Trump has said that. You know, he has the documents, he doesn't have the documents. If he had them, it would be okay. He can make the documents magically okay just by thinking about it. And then he says in another conversation he doesn't have the power to do that. So when Ari was saying that, and I might have mentioned it, but the discussion went elsewhere, I thought they're desperate, and I may have said that. He is so desperate to get a foothold on how to fight this, and he can't find a way to fight it. And the courtroom is a narrow band of inquiry and thinking, and he's used to a broad band, but still not a majority. His attack depends upon a small group of people, a tense group of people, a group that either affects or actually believes that some of the crazy things they say. And because of the crazy things they believe, that is, you know, there's grand conspiracies threatening them in some way, and it's the government, and it's almost that simple, and it's mixed in with religion because it's against God, and, you know, the victimhood of this paranoid politics is a very dangerous thing. And so we have this going on all the time, and so the other issues, what we might think were real issues, like what are you going to do about retiring? What are you going to do about health care? What are you going to do about children getting an education? These things, they don't matter to these people. These people are crazed, like drugged, amazing people running across a road to a destination that they're uncertain of, except that when they get there, they have to take over. So it's kind of an amateur crusade. Okay, so that's it. So what do we see? We see them attacking, at least verbally and freely saying they would hurt these people, that is the prosecutors, the witnesses, who knows, the judges, everyone. Now, it's broader than just Trump's case. And for example, there's a meteorologist in Iowa, and he was watching the temperatures and so forth while he was doing the weather, and he started connecting it to what he called climate change. And I hate that term because it's really global warming. And climate change, and you've heard me say this before, climate change is what we say to avoid talking about what it really is. It's sort of like the Ministry of Truth in 1984. That's what's going on here. We lie small, or to use Trump's term, bigly. And then when you point out that he said bigly, somebody said, no, he didn't say that. And that exactly did happen to me. So this is what our fight is about. But the desperation is, of course, bad. because it brings with it violence, and it's good because it shows that they're desperate, and therefore they feel the vectors, the lines of force are going in our direction against Trump and his people. And it's taken a long time, and there's a lot of resistance at Justice, and a DA in the Bronx, in Manhattan rather, and Jack Smith, fresh from fighting court wars in Europe, may be responsible for a drift in the right direction. That is, people in government finally saying enough is enough. We won't take it anymore. So let me get back to this Iowa meteorologist. So he would connect the global warming, he called it climate change, and talk about the effects. So what happened is he started getting emails attacking him, and he apparently got a threat about someone coming to his home. And the station wanted him to back off. Now the person who did threaten him, he was prosecuted, and he was convicted of several misdemeanors. So there's some punishment. That's what's got to happen every time these people do this stuff. But what should not happen, and may not happen, but has happened, is to say to the guy who's telling the truth, oh, you've got to go. That's wrong. Here in Loudoun County, we saw this as well. And what are they really doing? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But that's part of our problem, that our nation doesn't want to talk about science, won't admit to science. We could call them the flat earthers, but instead we can just call them idea terrorists, meaning they have no idea, but they understand terror, and they're terrified, and they are desperate, and they are doing this, and it's growing. And if we want it to stop, we have to show them that don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Our system, if it means anything, when people break the law, we're not talking about political speech. We're talking about threatening to hurt people. We're talking about hurting people. We're talking about taking steps and planning to hurt people, like the asshole that was going to Obama's place. Now, in my life, I have several things that run through my mind. For instance, one issue I got a bunch of threats from was when I protested the Civil War soldier in the courthouse green in Leesburg, Virginia. And I didn't think anything of it. I wrote a short editorial. It got in the paper. It got picked up by AP. Fox got interested in it. And it was a big deal all of a sudden. And this was before others were joining the fray. And one guy from Texas wrote me an email telling me he's going to come kill me. And I sent him a note saying, well, if you're going to threaten someone, you shouldn't do it by email. I didn't get the gendarmes on him, but another time when I was talking about guns, somebody threatened me. And I did call the local sheriff on the guy, and he gave me, well, as heartfelt as he could, an apology. But better than that, and I almost did prosecute that case, because you can file the case with a local magistrate yourself. But I gave the idiot a chance, and he did apologize, and that was basically the end of it. But we're in a different world now, and we can't let these people get away with this nonsense. And that means doing what the meteorologist did, on the one hand, filing a criminal case. But the station, shame on the station. Instead of standing by its weatherman, who's talking the truth, he ends up leaving the business. Terrible. So, in the category of science, I suppose this is another good news, bad news story. If you've never seen the Northern Lights, which are something to behold, like shimmering curtains and multicolored, and this is something that you actually can measure. That is, there's what they call a geomagnetic index, and it goes from 0 to 9. And very recently, in the last several days, it was a 6, so it's pretty serious. And what it means is that you can see it further down from the north. So south of Canada, you can see it in the several states. 17 states, I believe, is the number that they had. this is another example of how globally things are happening that we're not dealing with. So when when I was younger and my dad noticed me getting into public and semi-public arguments, he told me to be careful of the people that I was arguing with, not because of violence. He already knew. There was nothing he could tell me about that. But he said, when two people are involved in an argument, if you're involved in an argument with, pardon my French, an asshole, and you argue the same way, a third person coming upon them on the argument can't tell who the real asshole is. So if you want to be persuaded rather than just being emotional, you should keep in mind how you appear, because you're not helping matters if you can't explain to others what's wrong with this picture. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to explain that we have vagabonds, deplorables, unsolvables, bad people in our society who are so desperate and they can see it coming. They see it. They see we're going to bring this bastard down, and they want to stop it. And they think they can stop it by intimidating people. Very mob-like. Shouldn't surprise us about Trump. These were his close friends. Roy Cohn, he had them in his house. He did business with them. What do you expect from this guy? And he's a guy who read Hitler's speeches. So that's what we're dealing with. And we can't allow the bullies to persist. When they come down on us like a wolf in the fold, the cohorts all gleaming purple and gold. Thank you, Mr. Kipling. We've got to stop them in their tracks. No question about it. So what is the index of assholicity? Again, I hope you don't find that too offensive, but I mean, that's pretty easy stuff as compared to what's going on, the lies and the kind of language in the public. It goes like this. I figure I and a bunch of people can make a difference if, say, there are 100 against us. Okay, so myself and 5 people we can take on 100. But the question becomes, what happens when the numerator becomes so small that the opposition approaches infinity? Well, what you could say is just a matter of pure logic, is I should go off and throw pots, grow a garden, do something else, because the impact, the effect of an index of assholicity, which is 1 per thousands and hundreds of thousands, won't work. But I believe that the index is not against us these days. I believe the index favors us. First of all, we start with more people who are sensible than they are. And they may not be the silent supermajority, but they know in their hearts what's right and what's wrong. Whereas they have the dystopic advocates on their side. And we still remember what a republic was, and we're seeing elements of it in different cases and prosecutions and so forth. So we have reason to think we can move forward and we can make a difference for the better. Now let me give you another example, because it bothers me, because I've seen this here in Virginia, and I see it as a political organizing tactic across America. Moms for Liberty. But now talk about something misleading. Because these people are not for liberty, they're for cruelty, and the cruelty is to attack schools. First of all, they don't believe in public schools. They're not concerned about the education kids are getting, because they know it's part of the conspiracy to teach these kids the wrong things. Now, so what are they actually doing? Well, what they're doing is they're running down schools. They run for the school board. They get elected there. And then they try to climb up the political ladder so that they can say things like, well, you should have God in schools. You should have a ban on any discussion about discrimination. You can't run down America like that. You shouldn't wear a mask if we have another attack of COVID. You know, that's nonsense. It's no wonder that they're using Bobby Kennedy as a stalking horse, which is disgraceful and very upsetting to me, having known the family and known Bobby Kennedy somewhat, you know, not like an intimate, but I was with him a number of times. I supported him. And I see this son who is out there being a tool like Jill Stein was in the last election. So Moms for Liberty is out there, and they want to take over the school boards and so forth. Which takes me to, what is the remedy? Well, the remedy is to call them out for discrimination. Discrimination against children who are trying to decide how and who they are as a person as opposed to sex. We have kids who have learning differences, and I know something about it because my daughter, when she was younger, she had some serious learning differences. And as a parent, then you take a graduate course on what that means and what can be done about it. And they did wonderful things with my daughter. And this is one of my proudest moments, was when some people treated her differently because she had a stutter when she was younger. She went and she wrote an op-ed for a newspaper that appears throughout the county, describing it and saying, get over this. And she's also been with an acting group that talks about it. And I'm not scoring anybody who's not doing these things, but when you do these things and you tell the community, this is who we are, this is what we're about, you got a better chance of prevailing over people like these crazies who are out there compromising our dialogue, our society, our democracy, and our republic. And they just think it's fine, you can commit a crime because this freeloading, hateful, cruel, ignorant, opportunist Trump is leading them to believe, hey, you stick by me, I'll pardon you when I get elected again. We can't have that. So I realize that this is a mixed stew, but in the end what I see is the struggle is, I think, taking a turn toward the people of this republic who care. Who are the holdouts? Elected officials in both parties. Republicans should be standing up so that their tombstone says when it mattered they were there. But Democrats can't do what legislators like to do and have done for centuries, which is don't take a position you don't have to take until you have to take it. The trouble with that is that when you take the position against people who would overthrow our government, you have to take it now, because when the vote comes, you've missed the boat. The vote and the boat are at a time when they've already seized the government. And you can look at all these potentates who've done that and see how they did it, and that's how they did it. So, it's getting a little darker out here, and I'm glad I could get back to you. And we're going to celebrate our little pup, and we're looking for a good Greek or Roman name to name him. Ajax is our older Jack Russell, and so we need a name for the other one. So, have a good evening, and talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.